Hello everyone. Today we are going to tell you guys the history of Florida Central Railroad's 4603, a former United States Army Railroad GP-10 that runs on the Florida Northern Railroad in Newberry and Ocala, Florida. It's one of my favorite locomotives on the roster and has a unique history behind it. So let's begin the history behind this locomotive. 4603 started as a GP-9 Illinois Central Railroad 9216 in the early 1950s. It ran passenger service around Chicago and other parts of Illinois. Unfortunately, there isn't much information about this locomotive, but skip to the 1970s where Paducah Locomotive Works were rebuilding their old GP-9 and GP-7, and converted them to GP-10s, GP-11s and GP-18s. 9216 was rebuilt and converted to a GP-10 and was numbered to Illinois Central Gulf 8088. 8088 was released out of the shops in the late 70s and began to run freight service around Chicago, parts of Illinois and etc. It ran throughout the 80s and late 90s until the GP-10s began to retire in the early 90s as SD40s, and GP-40s began replacing the old Illinois Central Gulf units. 8088 was retired in the early 90s, until it was sold to the United States Army Railroad and was repainted. It was given a new horn, a rotating beacon and a new number. 4603 rolled out of the shops in February of 1992. It was transported to Fort Campbell, Kentucky and began its service with other units such as 1871 and 4617. It ran throughout Fort Campbell to Clarksville, Kentucky, pulling military vehicles and heading to the CSX interchange. It ran for a decade until the late 2010s, where Gensert units began to replace the old GP-10s, and in 2016 4617 was sold to the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum and still runs today. A year later in 2017, 4603 was sold to Kirby Family Farms in Williston, Florida. It arrived in Newberry, Florida in December of 2017. The owner of this locomotive is Darryl Kirby. In 2018 he loaned 4603 to the Florida Central Railroad as they were running out of trains in Newberry, and was paired with Florida Central Railroad's GP-7 number 55. Then in 2019, the horn and the beacon light was removed and the horn was replaced with a M3H horn, as the S5T was donated to CSX 1776. It still ran with KFRX ownership until finally being sold to the Florida Northern Railroad. It stayed for 2 years until in 2022 it was moved to Newberry, Florida to Ocala, Florida. Around 2023. The M3H horn was damaged by a tree branch and was replaced with a K3 LA. Till its day it still runs and paired with 48. The paint job is starting to wear off and you could see the old Kirby Family Farms reporting mark. That's the history of 4603. It really has an interesting history and became one of my favorite units. And also making a custom HO scale version of it. See you guys soon with more history.